On this week's show, we have a great time with our Indie of the Week, Free builds a fort, and Ben is Undaunted with an upcoming board game. All that, and we even have a chance for one lucky subscriber to win the Kill Team Octarius box when we hit 100,000 subs. We're a little less than 800 away at the moment. So to be with the chance to win, you just need to be a subscriber to the channel. So go ahead, hit that button, and then sit back and relax because we're going through a week's worth of gaming news. Your weekend starts now. Hello everybody, we are back once again for another walk through 7 days of tabletop gaming goodness, and I'm joined by Ben, Justin and Free this week. Before we kick in to a jam-packed show, I thought I would mention a couple of interviews that went out recently. We have been talking to the guys from Firelock Games, and they are working on 2 RPGs, one of which is Under the Black Seal, and the other is War Stories. So I have sat down with both designers, and you can have a wee look at those World War II and Age of Piracy RPG interviews, because we will be having Let's Plays coming up.
We will be.
I believe they'll be coming out in September, and the RPG should be hot on the heels of the Let's Plays as well. So if you've any interest in dabbling in either of those periods, especially the Age of Piracy, it's not a period that is rife in the RPG market. There's quite a few
plenty of romanticized versions of them.
Or fantasy versions.
Yeah, but the nice thing about these, and I think you talk about this in both the interviews, is that much like a lot of the things that Firelock do, they're very historically grounded in that respect, because obviously they take the flavor of those periods, but they also have been meticulously researched by the team behind these games, which is really cool. So
see, one of the key features that jumps out for me for both games is having a NPC pool, so that if your character gets knocked out or is out for a session, you can actually take control of the NPC and have them step up to go with the party, which is a nice feature. It's
certainly very different, and like I say, it's well worth people jumping in and having a wee look at those interviews to see what they make out of themselves. They're both going to be using the same mechanical system. They're both using Year Zero, so simple enough system to get in, but the guys at Firelock have obviously been working away in the background, tweaking and adapting it to make them all that they can be. Well worth watching for those. However, it's now time for the most important part of the week. It's time for Indie of the Week. And this week, I've decided to go all counters and paper and hex mappy on you.
I know.
We're going top level.
Well, could be. We're going across the pond to GMT, who are a purveyor of fantastic games. All the games that's fit to print. Just literally all the games, more or less. All of them.
Just all of them.
There are hundreds, I would say. If you go over to the GMT website and you just go to, I'd like to see all your games, please, you'll see there are 497 results. Now,
that's a lot of games. That is all the games.
They've not been slacking.
They do not rest on their laurels. Some, you may notice, are either made to order. Some are not currently in stock. However, we'll get back to those later on. But if you do fancy taking a look here, there's a whole host of games that you can sort of jump in on and have a look at. I've picked out a few of my favorites, but we may have a wee troll through some of the others because they do a spectacular breakdown of things like games by designers, which you can see it's not a small group of designers. Some may have more than others, but they generally tend to be the highest level or the highest quality they can be. It's been fresh in my mind because I've been watching a friend replay some Ancient Battles with SPQR recently.
Mhm.
This is one of their, I wouldn't say it's one of their flagships, but certainly one of their most well-known. This is volume 2 of Great Battles of History. I think it goes up to like 15 volumes, and they're not all Roman. So, it starts with Greek and goes through Roman and into medieval and all sorts. So these tend to be sort of hex maps. This deluxe edition contains some of the supplements that they've done separately in the past have been sort of folded in, so you can play. But this is a proper sort of top-down, old-school hex and counter map.
I mean, SPQR's been around for a while, isn't it? Especially being the fact that it's in its fourth edition now.
Well, yeah, this is the 4th edition. I wonder if I can bring up some of these to show you. So when you get it, you get apart from all the counters, you get the maps for specific battles and encounters, and it tells you how to place them and how to set them up, formations that they would have used, and this is, while it's a large part of GMT's sort of catalog, or the hex and counter battles, it's not the only thing they do. The SPQR and the Great Battles of History. There's a second/supplemental set, which is, I think, Great Battles of, it's either Great Battles of America or Great Battles of the American Civil War. I can't remember if it's multiple, like War of Independence and that sort of thing. But they have a whole set of games within the American Civil War as well. So
very nice.
There's a outstanding amount of stuff in there. But they haven't just done the likes of the Ancients. You've also got your more popular ones with your Command and Colors, which again is another massively well-known set of rules. And this is also on its 4th printing. Some of these games will be more expensive than others because of the amount of components in there. But there's also a quite nice thing they do on the GMT website is, before you start hitting the description, you get a load of resources that you can go looking at, which will include things like third-party.
Do your homework first.
Well,
yeah.
There's all the rules and scenarios, but then you also have tactics cards, articles, both from GMT themselves and from other people, and a lot of times you can just go and watch Let's Plays and that sort of thing. And then it will get into the description of what you actually are looking at. So this is my particular favorite. It's not on every page for every game, but they have started adding it to more and more games. So you can see at a quick glance the complexity level on the left. So Command and Colors is medium complexity, and then the solitaire suitability on the right. So some of them obviously are right up the top because they have a solo mode. Other ones require some massive bashing to get them there, or other ones are completely unplayable solo. But Command and Colors is a gorgeous game from Richard Borg.
It's very much like as you said, like the flagship thing, I think, for a lot of the people that are considering, like, oh, GMT, Command and Colors.
Command and Colors, yeah. And it's all about, I suppose, SPQR has very specific maps, as do all the Great Battles of History, where they are specific to a location and a scenario in time. Command and Colors has those scenarios in the book, but when you're playing on the same flat hex map, and then you're putting hex tiles on to give you yourself the terrain in question. So it's not as specific, but Command and Colors is more about army maneuver. So it does a very good job of recreating, to a certain extent, like an abstraction of a battle, but then you've got your left, right, and center. And when you're playing, you're moving those depending on card drawers. So it works a bit differently from some of the other games where you may get to move everybody in a turn, or you're moving them on a certain amount of action points. So you get the choices. In this one, it comes down to sort of card draft. So you have a hand of cards, and then it's up to you to decide how to go about moving things around.
It's one of those nice games, I think, in their collection that kind of fills a couple of different sort of criteria, in that it's a really nice entry point for a lot of people that want to do a lot more wargaming in this style on the tabletop, because the ease of the rules is a little easy if you dive into. But then on top of that, It's also got a nice thing in there for those people that kind of want to play war games but don't particularly want to paint miniatures.
No, I get that.
Because you can be like, instead of having to paint lots and lots of miniatures, I've just got these lovely little wooden blocks that have nice illustrations on them. And because it covers such a wide range of different things, you can really have fun with that, because like they do specific sets that are themed around maybe a particular Roman battle or the entire period of Napoleonic history, as we're seeing here, which is really cool. The other nice thing as well, if you do like miniatures, is that I've seen plenty of people on like Board Game Geek or whatever that have then taken little 10mm models and then used them in place of the different miniatures, the little wooden blocks and stuff as well, which is really cool. So.
I just want to literally add to what you said, Ben, in terms of like if I was to look into kind of wargaming to an extent of this, I do like the option to have the little kind of character blocks, as it were, because it doesn't force you. I think something that I find quite daunting in getting to kind of historical wargaming is painting up a whole army before I get there, and having the option to dip into it, see if I enjoy it, see if before committing to having painted a whole army, before having committed to having everything out on the table, I can try out as much as I need to as well. So I really do like that. It's a great way to get people in.
It's
Sorry, Dan. But I'm noticing the weight on it. It's 5 kilos. 5 kilos of game.
Ooh.
You get a lot of wooden blocks in there.
Gerry did say all the games, and by all the games, you mean all of the games.
I will say at no point have GMT ever skimped on the quality or production of any of their games. So you're not going to find flimsy cardstock in these.
That's great.
But it explains why it's $80.
Yeah,
they're very much the like the go-to if you really like doing 2-player stuff. Like obviously a lot of war gamers enjoy 2-player games anyway, because that's the nature of wargaming as it stands. But like if you like playing a lot of war games, or at least board games in this respect, with just another person, maybe your partner or something, these are really, really good for that, because they give you that really nice challenge, but they also play around with the scope of that as well, because you can always go off and be like, switch forces. Or if you're going to get one of the larger games, you can also then add to that with a lot of extra pieces and then play around with like what if scenarios and that kind of thing as well. So there's a lot of depth to the game. It's not just kind of like a one and done thing where you're like, I played the Romans versus Hannibal. That's that. There's lots of things for you to play around with in it, which is really cool. So
I think it's literally, as you're going by this, Gerry, I think, and again, another issue that I tend to have is finding a particular era in time of historicals that I would find interesting. By the looks of it, they've got everything here, I don't think I would suffer finding a particular period of time that would intrigue me.
And it doesn't have to be, specifically historical battles as well, because they have things like space empires and dominant species.
Dominant species is fascinating.
Wow.
So you too can try to be all that you can be in the battle for evolution. And,
nice.
Ruffle stomp those terrible little meerkat-like rat human things. Will come in time. Lizards forever.
Just raptor everything.
Yeah. And again, you can see, well, here's another prime example where you've got all the online resources and the reviews up the wazoo. So, sometimes you'll run into problems with games or websites like this where they have a lot of games. It doesn't show you everything, or maybe it'll have like a version of the rule book and people are going, well, but what do people actually think? Is it any good? They have absolutely no problem in going, you want to know what it's like? Here's what all these people have thought of it. So, you can go off and see for yourself exactly what's going on.
Weirdly, I've remembered that I have actually played this game.
Oh, really? Yes. There you go, see.
I've played something similar, but not this.
I've also stood and watched people play Twilight Struggle as well.
Twilight Struggle, yeah.
Because I could not, for love nor money, get my head around exactly how to play it. But I had a very good time watching people play out the Cold War, which was nice. So
which is what you want in life.
If I had to pick one to play, this would be it.
It's very fun. It's very fun. It's a bit different, but it's very fun.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Honestly, it's the idea of just taking on a subset of amphibians, arachnids, birds, whatever, and seeing how can you evolve yourself to basically murder and munch everything else, unless you're going to be a herbivore like Ben probably would be.
Herbivore's got to start somewhere. So
got to evolve one day,
But apart from that, one of the other ones I picked out for, I suppose, novelty value, or just to show that it's not all war. Thunder Alley. So Thunder Alley is essentially a NASCAR style racing game, where you play
war.
2 to 7 players.
Nice.
Cool.
But each player is a team of 3 cars, so it's not about first past the post. It's about where your team finishes. So you could blitz everything forward, get your car past, and meanwhile your other 2 have blown out their tires or have exploded all over the track, and then you don't make the winner's circle. So you've got this interesting combination of race, but also resource management, making sure that people pit, making sure that you've got the right tires on them at the right time, and that sort of thing. And it has some interesting sort of mechanics regarding movement and the like as well. It's not just put your foot on the accelerator and go around in a circle, although we all know that is it. But there are
Here comes a left turn.
The American way.
Oh, you're not giving me those. Why are you giving me those?
As someone like I've played Formula D, which is another very famous racing board game. But one of the problems that that game has is that once your car is out, you're out. Yeah. But I like the idea that in Thunder Alley, then you're playing around with the idea of a team of racers, so that you're like you've got to balance things a little bit more, which I think adds a little bit more to the strategy element of that, of course, which is nice.
And Thunder Alley spawned sequels, one of which is Apocalypse Road. So while the first one is just NASCAR teams, this is Mad Max. This is Death Race 2000. You've got your Frankensteins and the like.
Give me your Armageddon.
Yeah. So maybe I'm showing my age by going to Death Race. But anyway.
No, because they did remakes, but I'm sure you're going to the original.
They did remake. Why would
you
with
Jason Statham?
But the original one had Sylvester Stallone and David Carradine. You don't need to remake David Carradine's Frankenstein. It was amazing. Anyway, right. But this is I think the second expansion. So Apocalypse Road changes it to being the future. The future's gone a bit wrong. The race teams are still there. People are still baying for their favorite team, but now it's got a bit hairier and scarier.
Yeah, someone must have strapped a missile launcher on there.
It really does what it says in the tin, the front of that, doesn't it? Apocalypse Road. And then, that picture on the front, it really does.
I would definitely give this a blat.
Yeah.
That looks quite interesting.
Now, is there miniatures with it, or is it all like blocks and stuff again?
Oh, no. It'll just be tokens and like. At no point will you find miniatures in any of these games. This is a board game company who make board games.
That's fine. I'm just going to go to Poundland, buy up all the Hot Wheels, and start on them again.
Do that anyway.
See some of the weird and wacky track layouts they have as people go donutting around.
That's awesome.
And there's a lot of after action reports and stuff there as well, which we'll talk a bit about that, because GMT is a comprehensive website. Let's put it like that. It's not just buy our stuff. They do encourage people to check out the website and actually go and have a look at some of the other bits and pieces.
It's one of the nice things about a lot of the things they do is that there's a lot of community driven stuff built into what they present. So you get, as you've said, like lots of things to like links to community resources or people who have made cheat sheets to help people who are new to things dive into them as well. Like when I was looking at I think it was Command and Colors Ancients. This was a couple of years ago because my friend was really like, I really want to play more GMT games, and we were like, but we go for this. He didn't do it in the end. He bought Twilight Strogman in the end, but because he was like, this is easier, let's just do this. But we were looking at Command and Colors Ancients, and there were so many resources online for like, if you want to start playing this game, here's some nice helpful PDFs and stuff to help you go. Here's a rundown of what you should be looking at in your first battles and that kind of thing. So it's a classic collection from GMT, but one that has seen a lot of love over the years. So
coolness.
I pulled this one out because it really interested me that they had a historic empire building game that doesn't have to have anything to do with warfare at all.
One of my favorites.
So Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea, which by the way is a fantastic title anyway. Is all about playing across 4 epochs with various
very cool
Mediterranean adjacent empires. So you may have your Greeks, your Romans, your Carthaginians, Phoenicians, whatever it happens to be. You're building your empire up, you're trading, you're trying to get the best out of your empire. All the while, event cards are being played, like natural disasters, Vesuvius going off and Pompeii getting ashed, things like that. But there is the option for warfare, because warfare was part and parcel of the ancient world. But if you and your game group don't want to do any warfare, you don't have to. Or you do a little bit of warfare. Maybe somebody's getting a bit too angsty and they just need a couple of their cities salted just to keep them on the even keel. Then you could do that and then go back to being peaceful again. Go, weren't you happier when we were just trading before you made me come over there with my legions and stamp on you?
I mean, Gerry, if you refuse to trade, wheat and barley with me, I might just have to come and take some of that.
Well, yeah, that type of thing. You need a breadbasket in the world, but just saying. But it also
a war game only, even when you want it to be. I really like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
It's really interesting,
and it's a solo up to 6 players as well. So there's plenty of scope in there depending on your group. So you can get right in and really develop your nation and try and push it to be the Atlantis of its time, so far beyond everybody else by just dominating the area and being the best. But I just like civilization board gaming, and the complexity is at the sort of the top end of their easy range, which
very cool.
I really like. Just the idea that it's not a massive time sink of a game, because some civilization building games and things like that
can be like 3 or 4 hours.
You're having to really, and your brain's having to tick away the whole time, trying to work out exactly what you need to do to keep people fed and happy so your civilization doesn't collapses. But the civilizations in their sea seems to be a much lighter stroke on that one.
See, this is the thing. This looks like a game where I can sit and practice solo, because by the looks of it, you've got different setups for different how many players, depending on how many they are. And this just seems like something I'd master solo before letting anybody else play.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Clearly the first time you've ever played Free. Why do you have half the map? Just beginner's luck.
Beginner's luck, Yeah, I do like that though, because it's replayability. So if you do kind of get not bored, but if the one player, the solo aspect, or the 2 player, you can always add more, get a different map, play a different setup.
It sounds like Free wants to just embody the Roman Empire, learn
pretty much.
and learn and learn, and then conquer everything in one fell sweep.
That's what I'm doing.
What are all these things? What are those gods? They're not Greek gods; they're Roman gods.
Yeah, then they tried to go into Ireland and Scotland. Didn't go so well.
I've been worked out.
The key is you don't leave the med. Stay warm. It's all about staying warm.
I really like this, because when it comes to a lot of Euro games, I'm the definition of the turtle. I like to make my own little thing, and if you come near me, I'll scream. So this seems like a really fun game for me to dive into and be like, I'm just going to make the Greeks awesome.
I'll do me.
Okay, so you guys fight. I'll be fine.
It's like, oh, Ben, that's a nice coastline you got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
But what we could do, Justin, is we could ally. I could be your toady. I could give you resources, and you could do war, and then I'll just grow in the background. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take my fleet of battleships away. Make sure those merchant ships are on the way within a week.
Yeah. I'll be the Grima to your Saruman. There we go.
I think I'd be exactly the same as you. Just mind my own business. Exactly. Building my civilization. As soon as someone wants to kind of come over, it's very much a how dare you. I'm fine.
I mean, I will come and ask to trade. If you say no, I will go away. I will return with my battle fleet and ask you, would you like to trade?
Exactly.
Oh, that's
just like
really
the British Empire.
Just like exactly the same. Yeah.
I think this also shows off, a lot of the ones we've looked at, you see just the diversity in the art style as well, that they really push for the art style to match the game in question, whether it's a post-apocalyptic race game or ancient civilization building. They look much different from each, you're not going to pick a Napoleonic battle game that will look like this. They obviously have a wide variety of artists working for them to make the games and the game components as fitting to the setting as they can be.
Yeah. It's very nice indeed. Very cool stuff.
I'm going to skip on, actually. I'm going to skip
It's too
Churchill.
much of a selection, Gerry.
I'm going to go to P500 because I did say I'd come back to this.
All right. Okay.
So some of the stuff that's out of stock, and some of the stuff that's being worked on gets, well, not some, all of the stuff that's being worked on gets dropped into this section, P500.
Okay.
And Project 500 is so they can make sure that the things people want are being worked on and published sooner rather than later.
Okay.
So
That's interesting.
what happens is about 3 to 4 months before they're finished something, it will go on to this. And then when people have pre-ordered up to 500, then they go, right, well, that's locked in. We're going to be doing that. You don't get charged at the time. Instead, once they hit that 500 and they know it's going to be published, then they go for final playtest and final layout and errata. Takes a couple of months, and then you'll be charged when they're actually going to ship. At which point, if you don't want to, you go, no, take it off your list. But it means you know when things are coming. It also means that they are printing the amounts that people want.
Right. Yeah.
And because of this, they've got past a point where games weren't being reprinted because they were too expensive. So you've seen things like 5th, 6th, 7th edition versions of some of those games because they are that popular. Other things would end up being dead stock, or multiple people will be coming to them going, I've got an idea for a game. My idea is, the race to the Midwest. And you can see the orders on each one. So, they're looking 500 before they go into production. 1,566 for Atlantic Chase there. Bayonets and Tomahawks, which is a really interesting looking French Indian war game. I was looking at that a couple of days ago, actually, is up to 1661.
Very cool.
So once they hit the sort of 7,800 mark, then they're pushing forward with the actual print, and then they expect to have it in people's hands about 12 weeks after that. Although in some cases it's been a month after it because they're getting their sort of their timings dialed in over time the more they do this. But it means they can have lots of different things on the go and not have to worry about producing the wrong one and then losing money, which then has a knock-on effect that means that they can't do something else because they've tanked a previous game. So it's a great way of getting reprints going. They reckon about 2/3 of their catalog would not be currently available if it wasn't for the system.
Wow.
Well, having the idea of a critical mass before you do a production run, I like the idea. I've actually suggested that to a couple of companies over the years, and this just shows it works.
Yeah. I think it's nice for a kind of community member or someone that's buying into these can track as well, can see where it's at, like you said, at the printer, depending where it is, and as well as that, it gives you somewhere to look at what other people who are interested in the same games are going towards, and you might find a little gold nugget that you'd never have looked at, but because it's quite an interesting concept.
Yeah. So I've plucked 2 from the mire of the P500 system to have a look at because it is my want in life. What I picked for you, Free.
Really?
I'll also point this out. By pre-ordering on the P500 system, there's a discount.
Oh, cool.
Once it gets published, it goes to its full retail price for other people afterwards. But you're helping them out, and they help you out as well. So hence the P500 price. So yes, Banish the Snakes is a cooperative game of St. Patrick and Ireland. Don't stop laughing.
Are they real snakes or are they pagan snakes?
That was kind of my first question.
Well, of course they're pagan snakes. That's why he gets rid of them. If they were good Catholic snakes, he'd have kept them.
Little snake components, it suddenly can be something different.
Why are there cobras here? No, you're not meant to be here. Off you
go. They're not relatives.
That's the pagans with hoods on. That's cobras.
So
Conan visits Ireland.
There is a shocking amount of historical bits and pieces on the DMT website about the historical characters. I believe it is actually the pagans rather than snakes themselves. However, if I have any worth, it is to live my life for God and to teach these peoples. Now, you didn't say that when you were minding sheep halfway up Slemish, Paddy, did you? You keep your mouth shut. Anyway. But so a medium complexity game with the highest degree of solo playability because it has a solo mode built in.
Nice.
This has already passed the cut. It's made the cut. It is being published.
Sounds great. That's why.
In fact, it could be coming fairly shortly.
I mean,
the game has your map of Ireland. 4 provinces. That's wrong, though. No Tara, of course. Oh, no, he does. The High King of Tara, which means Meath is a province at this time. Come on, fella.
Honestly, if you're ever wanting to get like an old school Irish family into board gaming, this is it right here. Just set it down on your nan's table and off you go.
Nan, yeah. How do you feel about banishing the snakes later? Well, let's give it a go.
I mean, you like St. Patrick, don't you, Aunt? I do. Well, here, I've brought this along for you. Let me just lay it out on the table. You know, it's a board game about Ireland and it's a board game about St. Patrick, and I think you might like it because we're coming up to the, St. Paddy's Day.
I love that it's cooperative and solo, just in case you want to go out about that business on your own. There's options.
Well, as you say yourself, solo is a great way of actually learning the game then before you bring it to other people, although it looks like it's not a particularly taxing game to get behind. So,
well, depending on the mechanic changes between solo and, player play.
Well, I would say time will tell. You can go in there and find out because there's a ton of articles both on the historical side of it and the gaming side as well. So that was the first one I plucked out of the ether for banishing the snakes. And then the second one, this is the Plum Island Horror.
Okay.
Island Horror.
And again, has also made the cut. Oh, there's a whopping 30% off that one.
Wow.
But this is, I have had a look at the video, but it's just like a little teaser spam reel thing. But Plum Island Horror is a cooperative / solo game where a massive storm has occurred on the 24th of October, so a week before Halloween, and unfortunately hit this little island with this little community on it. But worse, it hit the Pearl, which is the Plum Island Research Lab. That's the nickname of it on the island by the people. And a batch of gases for whatever they were testing there, perfectly ethical and legal, of course, by the government, killed a load of people. We say a few days later, they all got up again.
Zombified.
And after they attacked the people in the Pearl, they then went to the smorgasbord that was the town on the island. Just a fun-filled time for all. And it's a 1 to 4 player cooperative sort of tower defense game.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
I like tower defense. Cool.
So you're having to hold off the incoming abominations as they sort of tear their way through you. It also has like a random element where every player gets a token in the bag, plus there's like 3 zombie tokens, plus there's like a doom token, and so every turn you pluck one out. So you've got a random order for your activation between the players, the zombified people, and then the Doom one. You draw an event card. There's also a push your luck mechanic where you can try and do something at the end of your turn. You can do another action, but then you have to draw an event card, so it can push the Doom a bit harder on you. So there's a lot going on with the game. But at the same time, it's one of their sort of lightest sort of games when it comes to it. It's mostly card based and just sort of go for your guns.
I'm pretty sold on this one.
Yeah, is Plum Island on its own? I mean, that's a great way to have an outbreak where it can't get anywhere else, so the zombies can't swim off. You can go on holiday to Plum Island.
Give it time. They do have choppers. I imagine. I imagine if they wanted to expand it in the future, then somebody could have escaped. Some zombie may have been tanked up by I'm not saying the government.
Got his boat license, absolutely.
Well, if you kidnap one and drop it into one of those countries that your government doesn't like. Oops.
Yeah, but you need to know
zombie apocalypse. Yeah, you
need to know how it works first. Hence, everybody in the back of this van, and we don't crash into something because of a cat on the way down the road. So yeah, the Plum Island Horror,
awesome.
Which just I thought was hilarious.
And again, something a little bit different from
Very
kind of like
so.
standard. Well, yeah, it's nice to see them like do the kind of typical historical big massive Euro war games, and then something a little bit quirky, a little bit weird as well. So,
and I the final thing I want to draw people's attention to is Inside GMT, which is their blog, and it contains just stuff people are working on. So, for example, somebody has written, David Spangler, who I don't think actually is behind the game, but he's decided to write a short story to go with the Plum Island encounter, which is just really great. But whenever you come into their blog, You get the recent posts, so you get what they're working on, you get bits of fluff or whatever it happens to be. But if you ever look down the categories here, there is a host, a wealth, a smorgasbord of bits and pieces. So you've got after-action battle reports, 150 of those. Designer blogs, almost 700.
Nice.
Developer notes, which are always nice to see what people are actually thinking when they're working on games.
Yeah.
Inside the game's history, general interest, series replayability, scenario variants. So people have gone in and gone, I've played all the scenarios in this. Now I want to make my own.
Nice.
Here it is for other people to try out as well. Strategy articles, solitaire systems, 30 of those. We're always after solitaire systems. So videos as well. They have their own YouTube channel, by the way, which is a mix of sort of unboxings and playthroughs and bits and bobs of varying sort of quality, I would say. But if you just look for GMT Games on YouTube, you'll find it.
I'll put a link down below for people to check out.
Yeah, cool. But it's the whole kit and caboodle for GMT, from anything you can think of, I imagine. I can't think there's a game type they don't do, or a system or period that they haven't investigated at some point. And I think that was my gift to you this week.
I am going to get lost in that later, Gerry.
No,
Christmas came early.
Because you're moving. What
doesn't mean I can't send things to the new place, Gerry.
Yeah, that, and depending on how Free's coming across, if she has 8 hours to kill on a ferry.
That's true.
Who knows?
Okay. Well, I'm saying nothing. I think we should take a break, and when we come back, we'll be having a look at the news.
Coming to you from the center of Northwestern Europe. Covering board games, war games, card games, and all that you love. It's the news.
So, diving into the news from this week, we start with a little bit of fantasy stuff. We've looked at these guys in the past when they had their Kickstarter up and running, sort of like midway through last year. So Ragnarok Miniatures look to be coming back to Kickstarter this year with a new selection of releases for their sort of dark fantasy Ragnarok Viking world that they've been created. Previous to this, they did Draugr, or dwarves, I guess you'd say, from Norse mythology. But now they have been moving on to the undead. So if you're looking to unleash the Draugr on the tabletop, especially familiar to a lot of people who played Skyrim, of course, then you'll have access to a whole range of new releases from them for this by Kickstarter very, very soon. They're going to be working on a whole selection of different things, so you can make an entire army out of these, or for example, a warband in Saga. So you're going to have your leaders. So you've got your bothy with the kind of like boar's head cloak over the top of it, which is very cool. And you've got a selection of different Draugr with spears and swords and axes, and you've got bowmen there as well, which is pretty cool too.
And one strange goblin / gremlin looking creature.
Yeah,
he's not alone. Don't worry.
Yeah. So just to go back to the Draugr just for 1 second. So obviously they're going to be doing like this full round, well-rounded selection of offerings for the Draugr. They did kind of tease them in the previous Kickstarter as a little bit of a bonus for people who backed it. But they're going to be coming in force, as you can see. And Colin Patton has been working away, painting up all manner of these miniatures, and they look pretty freaking awesome. So especially if you're going to be trying to put together 2 armies, maybe of Draugr versus the forces of the Draugr from Hell during Ragnarok, this would be pretty awesome indeed, especially if you throw in some gods from other games or ranges in there as well. On top of that, as you rightly pointed out, Justin, there are also the Doklfa, or Doklfa, I don't know how you say it. Some Scandinavian person's going to smash me with Thor's hammer for saying that. But these are kind of like your dark elves, your goblins as well. So if you wanted to throw them into the game, you're going to be able to do that too. If it's anything like the last Kickstarter, I think these are going to be like the special add-on that they do for this one. And then they'll probably expand this range out next time around, which would be pretty cool. So,
I have already seen greens of these in just loincloths with shields.
Nice.
So there's at least 2 sets coming, about 10 miniatures in each. So both robed and unrobed, or disrobed, if you will.
A question presents itself, Gerry. You see, there was one of the pictures there of the stuff that was being painted. Have you shown people how to do cloth banners yet?
I was going to say about the banners.
No, yeah.
I'm curious to see if you could show us how that's done.
Writes down, Gerry can.
Get inspired.
Step 1, cloth. Step 2, paint.
Stick it on a stick.
Profit.
PVA glue.
Those banners though, those banners are beautiful. There was a picture that you showed right at the beginning, and it had kind of like some form of animal skull at the top. I think it was some kind of horse skull. Just even little features like that, just on top of banners.
Yeah,
they're
very cool.
They are beautiful.
The
that's
big
a
horse
nice.
head.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're interested in, adventuring into Norse mythology and building up some fantastical forces to either use in something mythological or just as alternatives when you're playing your games of Saga, then these are pretty awesome. Go and battle over Svartalheim or down into hell, as I was saying before, and have some fun with that. Some very cool stuff indeed from Ragnarok Miniatures. Watch out for their Kickstarter very soon.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion the first Kickstarter was only earlier this year, so there's a very quick turnaround.
It may have been.
You're only looking 3 to 4 months, so potentially this could be out and then fulfilled before the end of the year if you're very lucky. So
very nice.
Colin has been hammering through them.
Depends how much they front loaded the work on them to get stuff ready to show off.
Well, a lot of it was already sculpted, so
there's an awful lot already good to go. So it's just where he goes from there. But where are we going next, Free?
Well, I want to know. I've got a question for you guys. Have you guys ever built a fort before?
Yes.
Hello, fort.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, sofa fort.
A sofa. If fort's a fort, so like.
Okay.
If you're building a fort, I'm going to sound really sad now, but I love building forts. I was one of those weird kids that used to just get in boxes. That was me. So in the game Fort, you do exactly just that. You build a fort. So it's 2 to 4 players, and you build a fort with your friends and you earn victory points. So now that game's been released for a little bit. There's an expansion brewing, and players have been told they're allowed to get a pet now, and they're allowed to expand their fort and bring their cats and dogs along with them. So that definitely would make a fort definitely more exciting for me anyway. But if you've not played Fort before, it is quite simple. Players take on the role as the children in building their fort. Realistically, they want to hold their favorite treasures in it, such as pizzas and toys and stuff like that, and it becomes kind of a stronghold for everything you need to do. So each of these will get victory points, and the person at the end who has the most victory points is champion. So pretty much your regular card game. But it's been out for a while, the kids are settled in, the parents have let them get pets, so they create even further mischief within the fort. So added to the deck, you've got dogs and you've got cats, and they bring so much chaos to the deck, it's unbelievable. So the game plays exactly the same, but you've got some new cards regardless of how loyal you think dogs are. You've got something new in this game. You need to keep them stimulated in the game. You can't leave them alone because they might wander off into somewhere else. Although cats do have a bit of lack of loyalty, we all know that. They will be hovering around players' decks. They're going to be looking whether you've got similar matching ones. And your challenge within the new expansion is to collect as many as them can, but you've obviously got to make sure that they don't disappear and wander off. So it's another way for players, ideally at the end of the game, it's extra victory points. And it just changes the way that you can play the game slightly. It's really how an expansion should work. It doesn't change the game. It doesn't change the mechanics. It's just an extra bit added.
Nice. Very cool.
So each cat does have a cat and dog. They have their own little name, guys. Their own little breed. You're not just got generic cats and dogs thrown out there. They've all got name and they've all got conditions that you need to meet as well, for they wouldn't do come up. So they are going to cause mischief when they do.
Dog runs off and cat pushes all the top of the building in on you.
Oh no, no more fault. Bye.
Well, no. You're, if you own a cat, it's just going to get annoyed with you and just push your deck, just tapping, slowly tapping your deck off the edge of the table.
I'd be impressed. I'd be impressed if anybody's got a cat into a fort. I really would.
I'm waiting for the, maybe this was just me, I'm waiting for the questionable magazines end up in your fort in the woods for no reason expansion. That would be interesting. But,
I would love them to add something to this, like a hamster card, an escaped hamster that you have to then
more
find.
Animals.
Well, do that. But you have to find the hamster in the deck before the cat or the dog eats it.
Oh, yeah, you've got a time limit added to it. That and a raccoon gets in.
Careful, those things have readings.
This is how we get raccoons.
And then you get the tetanus shot card.
But yeah, it does look like a lot of fun. I really like Fort myself. Fort is really quite a simple game. It doesn't take that long to play as well. And adding that to the mix just gives it another layer. It kind of reminds me of if you played Exploding Kittens, adding the cat cards to collect. They kind of add to that little bit, especially collecting.
Gorgeous art style as well.
Gorgeous.
Especially, it's the case with all of the later game stuff, but
with
really nice art style.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool.
Cool. Where are we off to next, Ben?
So next up, we're talking about fantasy football. It was announced a couple of weeks ago anyway now, that Blacklist Games are going to be working on a new fantasy football game, board game, I guess you'd say, similar to others, that is called A Myth and Goal. So this is actually designed by James Hewitt and Sophie Williams of Media Cat Games, who everyone will be very familiar with now. They've worked on a whole host of different projects, but they are bringing their expertise in board game design to Myth and Goal, which is going to be a 2-player fantasy football game where you'll play as your standard fantasy races. So you've got orcs, elves, humans, and dwarves, but they're tweaking things a little bit here and there and throwing some spanners into the works, I guess you'd say, to make it kind of like spice it up a little bit. Man, I'm mixing my metaphors. So some of the cool things you can do that they've announced is that you're able to make all-star teams. So all-star teams aren't necessarily just drawn from just dwarves or humans, etc. You can take them from all different styles. So you can have orcs in there for their big, brutish nature. You can have humans in there for their sort of like all-rounder spirit, and you can have elves in there for running those balls down the sidelines and into the touch zone. Touch zone? That's a word now.
Touchdown, yeah.
Touchdown zone. End zone where you make touchdowns. There we go.
Sports!
Wow.
Go sports team, go.
Anytime I've played any game like this, I like playing the dwarves just because they are small and they are tanky as all get out.
I just wanted to make a point of the football, and that didn't say Wilson. It said Kilson. Yeah.
I will also say that one of the other cool things they're doing with this is they're putting together a 1-player mode. So a lot of people will be familiar that we've been talking about solo gaming and stuff quite a lot over the last year or so. And this is going to have an option in there where you'll be able to test your skills against the AI of the game, which is pretty awesome indeed. Especially for those people who maybe can't get a game that regularly, you can sit down and try and test your strength against the game itself. They're also going to be doing all the kind of things that you'd find familiar with a fantasy football game. So you're going to have league modes and that kind of thing in there as well. So you'd be able to play through and upgrade your players and that kind of thing too, which is really nice. Considering what Blacklist have done in the past with a load of their games and the nice plastic models they produce for their collections, I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. And because, you've got Hewitt and Williams behind this as well, I think this is shaping up to be pretty awesome indeed.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see how it turns out and what they do. We've seen a few renders. So there are things like gnomes/halflings in the human team. So even though it's human, it may not be 100% human. So it'll be, I really want to see what sort of things they bring in and what they do with it. So much so that I've been hassling them. So I think there's going to be an interview with at least one. I think I've got a James. I may have both to chat to soon, and then we'll get that up on the channel so people will be able to find out exactly what's coming. But I think it's a month or so off before they're planning on going to Kickstarter. In fact, possibly even more than a month at the moment. We're still in August, so I think it's late September, early October sort of time for this. So there's plenty of time for us to find out more about it. At the moment, it's just sort of teasers, but fascinating to see what way they go with it. And I do like the idea that you have these MVP teams. You have your Harlem Globetrotters of the myth and goal world, where you can pick the best of the best from the various races and teams to sort of put them out and trash all the oncomers.
One of the things I'm really liking is that 1-player mode, because if you're playing a league and say you have an odd number of players, every week, every round you're playing, someone can play the AI, or if you and your mate can't actually get together for your league game, you can both play the AI and still have that round of the league played out.
Yeah, it could be really cool seeing how that plays out, actually.
Next up, we're going to be taking a look at some things from Wargames Atlantic, because it's me. So,
why would you not?
What can I say? You can't stop me. I've got control of all the buttons, so there.
Gerry, master of the internet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a whole host of things have been sort of splattered across the pages of the internet over the past few days. We knew the Cannon Fodder were coming. They're finally shipping. So I believe they may even already be in Australasia, but they will be in the Americas in another couple of weeks, and they will be in the UK and Europe at the end of September. But this allows you to make multi-part hard sci-fi troopers. So good for your Imperial Guard, good for your Colonial Marines, good for your penal battalions. I did ask them, can the hairy Dark Age Irish heads fit on there? And they responded with, are you planning on making an army of Jerrys? Might be.
Don't tempt me.
I might be Hudson. You're not the boss
is
of
the thing
me.
that should and must happen.
Yeah.
The OTT crew is a penal legion.
We'll find out whenever they arrive, because I will be checking to see whether or not the head's gone. Because, yes, shave your penal battalions because you don't want lice in amongst them. But there's bound to be some hairy, scary prisoners kicking around there who don't get touched, just get dragged out of solitary and then thrown in there. And
you know, the one guy that nobody else wants to be near, and you just kind of unchain him and go, look, bad people over there, go kill, go have fun.
Yeah, just launch them off. So, like most of their sprues, they either come in the half or the teeny tiny. In this case, they've used the half sprue to get you as many different options as you can. And it's not just the sort of US Marine Corps in space styly helmets. You can see these ones at the top here are very, I suppose, 1950s astronaut helmet style. You give them all a nice silver jumpsuit with these big glass-fronted visored helms on them and then send them off. Or if you're a fan of the film Soldier with Kurt Russell. Which, if you're not, you should be. Pause the video now and go and watch that.
They do look very Master Chief, those helmets, you know.
Master Chef.
I was kind of getting like Starship Trooper vibes off those helmets.
Yeah.
Especially from the book/cartoon series. Not so much the terrible movie. But
you could have them going up against
there were three.
You could have them going against the massive giant spiders that they've done from Wargames.
That is true.
There you go. There's a bug hunt ready for you.
Yep, so. Because those giant spiders do have sci-fi options on the sprues as well. So not all of your aliens have to be bipedal. Apart from the Cannon Fodder, they are also announcing the upcoming World War I British.
Oh my God, yes.
Now, likewise, on the same boat that's carrying the cannon fodder, the World War I French are on their way. So they'll be at the same dates in those same places that I've already told you. But here's some of the current renders. So they always put the renders up. Two things to bear in mind. One, these are not the final cut of what's going on the sprue.
Mm-hmm.
So they do take feedback. So people have been feeding back about some things like the use of the gammon bombs and potato mashers and things like that. But you have a nice mix of stuff in here, going from the standard sort of tin helm with gas mask or without, to these cap badged hats, which are very good for if you're doing IRA against black and tans, because they've look more like the RIC and Auxilia.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do your interwar period, or for very British Civil War as well. It would work.
That did come up in the comments.
Yeah. So yes, there are more Lewis guns than anybody would ever need to see, but not all of those will make it to the sprue. So at the moment they're just playing around with concepts and seeing what they can fit on there.
I think they said they were going to work on a few more arm and body options as well. I think it was.
There will be a sixth body, so it will be another 30-man set. Don't know whether we'll get another prone one or another kneeling one or what's going to happen. Time will tell. There's a few oddities that people have been sort of looking at. One is this deerstalker-like thing.
Yeah, the
here.
deerstalker hats. Yeah.
I think they're not deerstalkers. I think they're trench hats, which were peak caps for one with ear muffs that they pulled down to cover their ears when it was cold.
Right.
That would make more sense.
But they should be wider and flappier and terribler. Because they're a bit too smooth and svelte and deerstalker, or alternatively, they are deerstalkers. They are front and aft, and in which case, maybe it's for very British Civil War. Who knows?
Could be.
One thing I'd like to see in this set is maybe some sci-fi bits just to like upgrade them, like they did with the Grognards.
No, the Grognards is solely sci-fi.
Okay,
it's a different scale.
Oh, fair enough.
But you could easily strap guns onto these.
There are space Brits coming.
Okay.
But I want them to be completely separate.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm quite content with these being solely historical, which is one of the reasons why some people are going, the Sikh heads don't really work because the uniform should be different. But then other people have been going, here's pictures of Sikh in that uniform because they got resupplies from Europe, not from Asia when they needed them. So
I have been skirting around the edge of doing something either World War II or World War I for a really long time. And I was tempted to dive back in and do some bolt action stuff. And then I was drawn to like Blood and Valor. and being like, "Oh, that's a pretty cool rule system."
Yeah.
I don't particularly want to get. I wasn't overly sold on some of the stuff that they were doing for that in terms of the kits and things. But now that is out, and it's coming out. Sorry, and then we've got Germans and French as well.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the idea of doing some kind of like skirmishy thing with Blood and Valor with that set, and doing like a set of like Trench Raider Brits with like the gas masks on, and like add some extra cloak and stuff to them as well for like the things they've been using to keep themselves warm in the trenches. That'd be really, really cool. Yeah.
Well, a few people have mentioned that. Could we get a few balaclavaed heads or maybe some scarves?
There's a lot of customization
sort of
you could do, for sure.
You get a body with a kilt on it if you want to do a Scottish regiment.
Yeah, and then just one by himself would be a shame. You want a separate box for that.
Yeah.
And then you can just start quoting Blackadder the Fourth all the time.
All the time.
We just need a flash heart to leap into the trenches.
I'm saying nothing. Before we move off the Atlantic altogether, there is one more box set that is on those ships, and that is their fantasy goblins.
Nice.
So this is another 30 body set. I won't call them men because they're goblins. But as you can see, a more generic style of goblin, a bit more, I suppose, feral-esque. I do quite like their pot helms as well, the little horns on them there.
I always get like a little bit of a Mongolian feel off those guys.
I think
the armor design.
Yeah,
they've got a lot going on. And as we were talking about the spiders earlier,
you can mix and match these together.
Mix and match. Yeah. There are specifically on the sprue. Hopefully we'll see this. Spider riding
saddle goblins,
saddles and legs akimbo for you to actually mount some of your goblins up onto the spiders. Right. So you can pick up a box of spiders and have goblin cav and goblin infantry, which is a genius way of doing it.
Is that a head in a hand up there? A head in a hand? Head on a hand.
Which
third
one?
row down on the right hand side. Is that a head being carried?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like one of the Dark Age Irish.
Yeah, and you've got one of the axe that probably done it right next to it.
Nice.
Well, one of the cool things about this is that obviously it's got that kind of like agnostic feel that it'll fit with pretty much anything. But the way that I looked at this was like, Oathmark have done the orcs. They're yet to do the goblins properly yet. These would be a really nice stand-in for those people trying to put together big orc and goblin forces for that. But also, obviously, a little bit of Tolkien-esque stuff in there as well. Yeah. Put together your dwarves from The Hobbit, for example, using the Oathmark kits. Go for a little bit more of a classic look to them. Have them fighting off against these in Goblin Town. Could be very cool indeed.
The weapon mixture on the sprue is very interesting as well, because you've got a good mix of between swords, axes, maces, and you've even got a guitar up the top.
Well, you've got arrows as well.
Yeah. But you would never really think to see a guitar on with goblins, so it's maybe something he's nicked.
Stolen from someone because it's stabby. That's
not all goblins are thieves.
Not all goblins are mischievous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely stolen. Definitely
stolen.
I mean, it was acquired in an inventive manner, shall we say?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. A nice range across the sprue, and also there should be enough bits and pieces on those sprues to do whatever you need to do. So if you want to do a full regiment of bow, spear, or hand weapons, and you've got you covered across the board, which is all fantastic. Moving from one monster to another.
If you are a King of Tokyo fan, or you actually want an excuse to play King of Tokyo, you're going to be excited because there is an absolutely massive box making a way in October. So there's a new monster box that's coming, and it's going to include two of the Halloween expansions, the Halloween expansion and the Power Up one, and a new playable monster, which some of you might know. So there's also some exclusive cards in there, a new dice tray, loads of bonus gear as well, and literally just to cause complete havoc and destroy Tokyo. So if you have needed an excuse to get into it, this is a really good starting point, because inside the box, as I said, you've got the Power Up and the Halloween expansion. So, and I do know the Halloween expansions are quite difficult to get hold of sometimes, because they do come out thematically, and some places don't stock them anymore. So along with the brand new version of, I want to say Gigasaur, I must not say it French.
Gigasaur.
You get an update version of him and box exclusive cards as well. So within that box, it's completely to him and how that plays. Very nice. It's the two biggest expansions that have been released so far. But if you want to get hold of any other releases as well that came out the side of Kings of Tokyo, you can play in and dip in with other monsters as well. And you can collaborate with King of New York. So it's a great way for you to start building into the game and start, just start off and get hold of some of those expansions that are quite difficult to get hold of. It just seems like something really big's coming for King of Tokyo soon. And I can't wait to see where it goes.
Very big monsters.
I'm just waiting for King of London.
King of London. Wow, what kind of monsters would you have there?
the hay-stacked head Boris Johnson monster.
Or just Tony Blair. Just a tiny little standee of Tony Blair.
Whenever they do anything towards Britain, it's usually effective. It's like Captain Britain. If you heard of Captain Britain, superpowers don't work outside the UK. What good is this? Like, who's this helping?
UK.
The Alan Moore run of Captain Britain is excellent, mind you, for any comic book fans who haven't read it. That being said, anything Alan Moore does is amazing.
I was going to say, I will say, if you have not played King of Tokyo or King of New York, they are very, very good entry-level games for people to start playing a little bit of hobby board gaming. And they're also pretty awesome if you're trying to bulk up a game night. So maybe you're going to play a massive game, play something like King of New York or King of Tokyo beforehand and have a lot of fun with it. Really good fun, really nice and sort of malleable with all the different options that they've provided for it. And as Free was saying, loads of expansions as well. So some awesome stuff in there for people that want to try a little bit more of a casual game. So
yes, cool. It is very casual, but it is so much fun. I think this is what I really get from this one. It's not difficult to pick up as well. Like Ben said, it is very much an entry-level game. There is so much being added to it, and by the looks of it, there is some new stuff and hopefully some big stuff coming along with it too.
Very, very cool indeed. Ben, tell me more about the Napoleonics.
Yes. So this is Napoleonics, but with a twist. Think Sharp versus Werewolves in a way. So you may remember that a couple of months ago we said that Osprey Games were going to be releasing a new skirmish war game from Joseph McCullough, which is going to be called The Silver Bayonet. And the idea behind this game is that you're going to be creating warbands of sort of like hunters and soldiers who team up with occultists, mystics and the like, and priests to hunt down the shadows and terrors in the darks of the forests of Europe. And of course, no game would be complete without a selection of awesome bespoke miniatures for it as well. And that's where North Star come in, and what you're seeing here. So North Star, in a sort of familiar fashion to what we've seen them do in the past for Oathmark and Frostgrave and the like, they're going to be providing a huge range of metal miniatures for you to use to either make your warbands in their entirety, for example, or perhaps just use as specialists within said warband as you go out to hunt down werewolves and stuff in the forests and such in Germany and France and all over the place. Looking very cool so far already. I really like that we've got a whole bunch of kind of like standard style military veterans and that kind of thing in there. You can see a few of them have already taken on some fearsome supernatural foes. You've got some of them with like crosses around their neck. You've got others with breastplates with the clearly seen claws and fangs ripping across it, which is pretty cool. And then as you'll notice throughout there as well, you'll also see some slightly more esoteric miniatures. So you've got like your priests and your sort of laymen that perhaps have been, following along with these soldiers during the actual Napoleonic Wars themselves, and then found themselves drafted into these warbands to help fight the terrors and the vampires and all that kind of thing too, which is nice. So yeah, a real awesome smorgasbord, which seems to be the word of the weekend for you to use in your games. And I really like that a lot of their stuff actually mixes very nicely with existing 28mm Napoleonics as well. So if you're interested in the period and you maybe have some Napoleonic figures sitting around, then that would obviously form the great basis for a warband in the Silver Bayonet when it releases in November this year. I mean, that's what you want. You want Sharp to go out, meet, was he Colonel Loop, the Wolf, the cavalry commander who was bringing horror to the hills of Spain. And it turns out he's bringing horror to the hills of Spain because he is a werewolf. It writes itself.
I mean, those hats are some good hats. They've put a lot of detail in the accessories and the hats. It's what I liked, because when you generally see like Napoleonic stuff come out, all of their uniforms and the details like that, you generally do see the same thing.
Very regimented.
It is.
Their uniforms are uniform.
They are. That's one way of putting it. That would do it. But all of their hats are different. All of their uniforms are different. Every individual detail on each individual mini, it's very clear where they belong, but it's nice to see that in each individuality.
I've got to respect the mustaches and the beards, though. Some of them are very fabulous. That guy on the left, that's a fabulous mustache.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, if anybody wants some inspiration for a kind of warband that they might want to use in this game, I would recommend a film called Brotherhood of the Wolf, or Le Pacte de Loup, if you want to throw in the French. But Brotherhood of the Wolf is freaking awesome, and I think would be a good opportunity for you to kind of get some inspiration for something like this.
Well, Halloween is just around the corner if you want to get some Halloween gaming in.
Get some Halloween.
That's very, very true indeed, yeah. But before we go to the horror of Halloween, Free, we've the corrosion of conformity.
Things are getting a little steampunk over here. So Capstone Games have just recently announced that they're having a partnership with Deep Print Games, and they're bringing a game called Corrosion on. So players become kind of a manager of their own engineering shop, and simultaneously they need to work on these machines to make sure everything is running smoothly. So if you do consider yourself a bit of an engineer, a bit of a tinkerer, it might be something that you do want to look at. So it is competitive, so players are going to work competitively against one another, and it's going to work in turns. So it does get harder the further that you go in the game. And whilst you are dealing with certain actions, you're going to need to multitask. So machines are going to need to be tinkering because they do have like a kind of a limited amount of time that they're alive for. You're going to need to keep spinning plates and stopping machines from breaking down and corroding. You're going to need to manage. And for a player to win, you're going to need to work under pressure. So you're going to need to coordinate your actions and stay calm. So if you do it correctly, under no panic, I'm a panic person, so I'd all over the place. The player who's able to score the most points is going to be the champion. But if you do want to juggle in panic, which is definitely something I'd more than do in spin plates, you are going to find it even more difficult. Take it slow, make your way through it. So the points flow within the game has been diminished. That's how you find who's the winner. So whoever's juggled their responsibilities as, a well-oiled machine, I must say, whoever scored the points is going to be the winner. So depending how many players there is, it can take roughly about an hour and a half to play to get to the final bit. So the components I find specifically interesting in this.
Yeah, they're very nice and thematic. It's very
they are, and everything fits. Everybody does kind of fit into that steampunk theme. You get you've got a double-sided board, you've got your player boards, there's factory boards in there, tokens, everything you could.
So there's lots of different options for people to dive into on repeat plays and things.
Loads of different stuff, and so it's been confirmed that it is going to be releasing at the end of the year, so November time, so quarter 4, just before Christmas as well. So if you do know of any engineered like minds who want to discover all nuts and bolts and Vic machines and want to multitask and juggle some plates, you're not going to be disappointed by this release for sure.
This has been building up quite the head of steam on the internet. So I think it's going to be pretty awesome, becoming a cog in the machine of corrosion.
You fill of them today, Ben. Someone's got to do it when Lloyd's not here.
Yeah, Lloyd's not here.
Somebody doesn't have to, but somebody always does.
I know.
It's the only comedy we know.
That is true. I also see it's got Pegasus Spieler as well. So presumably this is an English language version of an existing German game. So they do some magnificent stuff.
They really do.
It's already catching eye. On Board Game Geek, it's already up there quite a lot, gaining a lot of attention. On the hotness. So do make sure you keep an eye on that one.
Well, let's not be undaunted by what they're doing over there.
Oh, Gerry, you can't say something like that after telling us off.
I can, and I did. Benjamino, tell me all about the reinforcements coming for Undaunted.
Yeah, so Undaunted Reinforcements is the third expansion, I guess you'd say, or second expansion for Undaunted Normandy and Undaunted North Africa, which is going to be coming out in November. November is a big time for games, it seems.
Yeah.
So this is
Christmas.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the incredibly successful and award-winning Undaunted series. We started off this show with an India classic of the week, I guess you'd say, looking at Hex and Counter style board games. This is something in a similar vein, but a much sort of like easier entry level product. It's essentially a deck building game mixed with a war game on the tabletop. And Undaunted Reinforcements builds on everything that we've seen so far by adding in new cards, new scenarios, and some new play modes for Undaunted Normandy and North Africa. So some of the cool things they're adding into the mix. We're going to be adding in tanks and tank commanders, which is very cool indeed. We're going to be getting traps and schemes and ways to sort of like trick your opponents, which is also very cool. And we're also going to be seeing new options of play. So as I mentioned, there's going to be these new modes. So we're going to have a 4-player mode, so you can go into 2 teams of 2. Very cool indeed. And there's also going to be a solo mode as well, which has already been talked about previously with the other Undaunted games. But this is going to be sort of like fleshed out within Reinforcements to be able to dive in and play the game yourself. If you're not familiar with Normandy and North Africa, they are pretty awesome games. The whole idea is that you'll play 1 versus 1. One side takes on the forces of the Allies, the other takes on the forces of the Axis. You have a deck of starter cards, as is the case with most deck building games, and then you have a suite of options, as you can see there laid out on the left and the right of that image. And what you'll do during the game is that you will make a decision on your turn. Do you want to spend points to get more cards into your deck, or do you want to spend your turn ordering your troops across the tiles that you see there in order to complete your objectives? Because this isn't just a straight up fight between the two sides. There are reams and reams of scenarios for both Normandy and North Africa within these that you'll play through one at a time. So you can play through a little awesome little campaign with your friend, which I think is really fantastic stuff. All the units are represented by the little tokens that you see there. You've got the little round discs. And another really cool thing about this game that I absolutely loved when it first came out is that each of the cards has a little name of the soldier underneath it. So if Bob Jenkins dies, you feel sad about it, man, as you should do. One of your squad's a bit in the dust. You can't let Bob Jenkins go down. It also means that if Heinz Schmitzer, for example, leads the way to victory for your German forces, I've just gone incredibly German with that name, then you can laud him for his successes, which I think is really, really awesome, and tells a little story as you're going, which is cool.
Give him some oak leaves for his cross of iron. Send him on his way.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this as well. Simply because apart from the fact it's adding a solo mode, which is handy, from what I've heard, they're also going to allow you to combine North Africa and Normandy, which are 2 separate games at the moment.
Yes.
But Reinforcements will offer a play style where all of that can be on the table at the same time. So essentially you have multiple theaters all sort of interacting with each other. So it'll be fascinating to see how that breaks down.
Yeah, because the Normandy set comes with kind of like your standard US versus German stuff in there, because obviously all about the Normandy landings. North Africa then brings in the Brits going against the Germans.
Desert rats up against the fox of the desert,
So it'll be very, very cool to see how this all comes together. As I say, it's a phenomenal game. That obviously has won lots of awards already. If you haven't given it a go and you really like World War II and you kind of want to mix together card games, board games with miniature style war games, it's really, really worth a shot if you haven't given it a shot already. So
this certainly factors into something we were talking about on XLBS the other week, where we were saying about different things transitioning over to different, and this is a really good example of a hybrid of the 3, realistically.
Yeah, very much so.
Great example, and it certainly catches my eye because it's just a way for me to get into it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth keeping your eye out. Who knows, we may actually do a let's play on it.
I think it'd be really fun to show how this plays. That'd be really cool.
Because I have North Africa. It's behind that curtain.
But behind your speeder.
Keep your eye out for that one. We'll have to get that scheduled in at some point.
Very much
but that's a wholesome helping of news for this week. We're going to take a quick swish, and when we come back, we'll be looking at what's new and exciting in 3D printing. All right, then we're back, and we're going to be taking a look at what is the shiz in 3D printing. So, Ben, what have you found?
So, the company that I've picked out for this week's 3D printing is the shiz is Vae Victus Miniatures. So they have both a Gumroad and a Patrol, which we'll have a look at later. But their Gumroad is dedicated to a vast selection of different bits and pieces that you can use if you're going to be diving in to put together stuff for role-playing games in particular, alongside some skirmish games as well. One of the nice things about this is that it's very much focused towards the idea of, I guess you'd say, adding character to stuff. So, like with a lot of other patrons and things we've looked at, they're like, oh, we're going to give you fantastical monsters and all sorts of strange warbands and elves and dwarves and everything like that. There is that here as part of the Vae Victus collection, but a lot more of it is given over to these kind of incidental pieces, which I really wanted to highlight. And these are just nice things that you can use to kind of like even test your printing at home and that kind of thing, and also use, as we say, to do a little bit of set dressing. So one of the things that I really like about when it comes to war games or role playing games and that kind of thing, is that it's nice to have a table, obviously, with some standard terrain on it. But the thing that makes it even better is when you start to add character to different elements of it. So maybe if you're building up an entire tavern, for example, stick some beds in the top layers, as you can see from this collection. If you're going to be building up some some marketplaces and that kind of thing, add some stuff that you might find at stalls and all that kind of stuff too. If you're making an entire sort of village scape for your heroes to run around in, throw some of these interesting characters into the mix as well and have them wandering around as you're doing things, and maybe even have them as sort of like pieces that you could use directly within your scenarios. Maybe you need to go and hunt down this old lady, for example, who's perhaps doing weird things.
Making the child cry.
Yeah, all the kids have gone missing. She's sacrificing them to a demon. That's the answer. And loads of other cool little bits and pieces that you could use just to add that little bit of extra sousson to your games on the tabletop, which I think is really cool.
You could do like an orphanage breakout.
You could, yeah.
It's world building, isn't it?
Yeah, it's world building. Yeah, there's your 3 little pigs.
After.
Oh, Gerry, that's mean.
What, you don't like bacon? I love a bit of bacon.
I love bacon, just before and after. That's a very cute child with a very disturbing teddy.
A little voodoo doll.
I like the idea that maybe you bump into her on the street and she's like, oh, can you help me find my mummy? You take her back to the house and you realise that the parents are dead. And then you realise that it's all the doll that's been possessing the girl. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've ripped off the second Harry Potter movie.
Maybe you throw some stuff in there, a little bit inspired by Skyrim. We're talking about the school mom. Maybe you find a child trying to summon an assassin to go and kill their headmistress. Go and do it. Get stuck in. Have a bit of fun with an evil adventure. Could be pretty cool. And then that's the nice thing about what we see from ranges like this, is that they kind of allow you to play around with some fun and interesting ideas that maybe you hadn't necessarily thought of before. And the fact that you get to print it off at home as well means that you can have it readily available for you within a couple of hours, which is pretty cool. So, yeah.
I think what I like about these is having this on the table, it does inspire more. It inspires more story. It inspires more creativity. If you do have a blank table without a world around it, fair enough, you're going to have your story in mind and you're going to know where you're going. But you might find some really interesting things. And you might, for example, just something as small as you said, the children walking around and the milkmaid back there that we just saw. It's nice to have inspiration on the table to be able to kind of improvise as well as have something planned out. And I think these really do that.
Every skirmish game needs a horse and cart at some point, because you will be raiding one. You will be trying to stop one from fleeing off the tabletop at some point. Also, like in the picture before that, Gerry, to the left of you, I think we actually got to see a rather rotund elf. You don't tend to see rotund elves, but there's one for you to use in your games. Elves can get fat.
We knew that from Haldir from Lord of the Rings.
Very true. Poor Haldir.
Well, I have a thought. Is there a miniatures agnostic dungeon crawler rule set out there?
Otherworld do their own dungeon crawling rule set, which uses miniatures from both their collection, but also all over the place. If you want to get that again. There's also Lasting Tales as well from Blacklist.
Yep.
I'm just thinking this range of miniatures and incidental components would be amazing to set up like either a village or a dungeon for you to actually go crawling around in. Yeah. You could play the children who've maybe fallen through a trap door into the undercity of your village.
I mean, as I was just mentioning there, I think Lasting Tales would be absolutely perfect for this, because the whole idea is that you make an adventuring group with your friends and then you cooperatively go through it. So you could theme things, as you say, to do something like that. Or maybe, you've got to go and rescue some dwarven miners from a large tunnel that's collapsed, and they've made friends with the kobold.
No, you never make friends with kobold.
Slaying the kobold. Candle.
Yeah. They are basically giving it a candle a day to keep it happy.
exactly. Yeah.
This mining stuff's amazing as well. There's a lot. There's loads of different themes as well.
The nice thing about that too is that you'll see that it's broken up into kind of wall sections, and then if they've got like a cross guard bit as well, so you can use those to map out the dungeon on the table without necessarily the need for a dungeon tiles.
Right.
Or, for example, if you do have a gridded map, then use those along top of that. Maybe, for example, with a Loke map.
Yeah, use
so you've made it into a 2.5D thing.
Yeah.
So
See, what I would nearly do with these is I would maybe create like a deck of cards with like different layouts, so you can do like a procedurally generated dungeon for yourself with that set.
Yeah. That'd be neat.
So you draw off the card and then you build that in from the modular set.
Yeah.
Yeah, rats. Has to be rats.
How giant are these rats? How giant do you want them? It's 3D printing.
Exactly. STL file, you can rescale those to wherever you want. They're almost werewolfish.
Become a rat catcher and hunt down the biggest game.
The rat. Oh, you're asking some Rat King in the mines.
I like that you've got things like the crystals as well, so the crystals could be used as objective markers in your game. So it's also all very cool indeed. There's normal rats for you.
Regular rats. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
An Iron Maiden.
Yeah, a torture device that didn't exist.
But,
have fun with it anyway.
Don't worry about that.
There's your prison guards that you've got to try and escape from when you're putting together a scenario that you've been captured by the town and the guard there. So.
Oh, actually, you know what you could do? You could do Escape the Dark Castle with this.
You could do, because they've got quite a few sort of like normal looking folk. You could use them as the characters and then have these as the incidental people that you meet along the way. That could be cool.
Yeah. And then you could do a more visual version of it with like a 2.5D building the dungeon as you go in the castle as you're trying to escape.
Paint the miniatures in black and white because it matches the cards.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
All I can think of is Blackadder again. Bag on his head.
I was thinking of Sir Ragnar from Hero Quest.
Popular church.
Yeah.
Wow.
More like a monastery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just seen that the fact that is, what was that, €5? Was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
3D printing is pretty cheap. Well,
it is.
At the STL source, it is. Once you've had the 3D printer and the materials, it make it a little bit more expensive. But other than that,
once you've been running on a 3D printer for a while, it's just always earning its money back.
Very true.
Yeah. The church stuff is gorgeous. The little candles and the little monks.
And you've got the theme sets and all that kind of thing as well. So obviously one of the things that they do is obviously Vae Victus has the Gumroad store, which we're looking at here, but they also have the Patreon, and they'll be doing theme sets every month, similar to most other Patreons that you'll see out there. So if you want to sign up to that, you'll be able to get some good stuff from them, which is really cool. I like that we're seeing things that aren't just typically sort of Western European stuff as well. It's nice to see role-playing stuff and skirmishy things that you can use from beyond our sphere of fantasy influence, which is cool.
You've got camels of all different packages. You've got one that's ready to go on a long journey. You've got one that's ready for a kip. You've got them all around.
But they're all single hump.
Yeah,
all single hump ones though. Want some double hump camels?
Not if you're in Persia,
fair enough.
They are. Your double hump ones are far, far away.
I see.
And it's no surprise that I picked these up because the August set was all about dwarves, which is pretty cool, obviously. But also they've got things like the starter set and things for you to dive into as well, which is always nice.
You surprised me, Ben.
Who would have thunk it?
Look, there's one bagpiping.
Nice.
Awesome stuff. Yeah. It's nice to see some people actually showing off the final prints as well. So you can see the quality of them as well, which is good to say. Yeah.
Really cool.
Each file will be available the month after the one they've been released. Oh, there you go.
There you
so
go.
If you're interested in any of these and you don't fancy the Patreon or you've just missed one, then just keep an eye on their Gumroad. Lovely stuff. They are. They look like some sort of unusual crab demons.
Crab people from the fifth dimension.
It makes sense.
It's a Doctor Who villain in the waiting.
Well, I see you've got another one though, Ben.
I have.
LabradoriteWolf.
Specifically picked out just for you, Gerry. So if you scroll down for me, so LabradoriteWolf, yeah. So if you just click show more for me, Gerry, there, and just scroll down. Oh, what's that? Is that a squirrel? In an army uniform with a gun at the ready?
What squirrel?
The most dangerous adversary
I'd like to point
striking
out,
from the shadows.
It's also got a Periton there, which
It
is
does,
excellent
which
if
is
you're
a-
doing a Beast of Nature. If you need Beast of Nature for Kings of War,
Wow.
Peritons are great. You don't
But,
see them often enough.
Yeah. My
Squirrel's
hope
awesome.
is that this is going to get Gerry interested in getting somebody else to do some 3D printing, because you can make an entire squad of squirrel soldiers.
Look at his little rifle.
Honestly, it's the
Look at his-
expression on his face. He's had enough of your.
Yeah.
That's all squirrels all the time.
You stole my
Oh,
nuts.
With his water-cooled
Yeah.
Vickers.
These are awesome.
There's an
That
entire
can't
squad
be
of them
light.
to pick from.
The Himalayan yak monk.
Nice.
Giant turtle. A tree.
But yeah,
Oh,
so they
what
have
is
an
it?
interesting selection. It's a
Yeah, they
it's
do,
a-
yeah. As we
a
land
sloth
on the
ninja.
Sloth ninja.
Sloth Ninja. Yeah.
He's,
Lowest
I bet
ninja
he's
star
Zen as
ever.
a- It's like,
Yeah,
It's a
there's a lot of weird and wacky going on.
I love
Obviously.
this.
There's that tiny harp-playing spider from the internet.
Yeah, the small singing one.
And not a Jimbo.
Oh, Summer of the Rabbit.
not
No.
you, Jimbo.
No.
No.
Similar.
Peacockatrice. Hybrid.
There's
They
some weird
are
and wacky stuff in there.
very cool.
Oh, and a tawny frogmouth. I like how it's a mixture of actual real animals and,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and then occasionally something bizarre.
Yeah.
This was the reason why I picked it out, because I was like, there is such an odd selection in here. I don't want to
Oh,
make it
yeah.
the main one, but
Deep one gorilla hybrid.
squirrel soldiers was just too hard to pass up. So
I
Well, I can
know.
understand why they are, after all, the best. And there is
Oh, there.
Sean
wait.
Connery's favourite mount. The elephant.
What scale would you print the little rifle squirrel in? Would you do him like?
Oh, I do him
actual-
28 mil, but he'd be
Yeah.
like yeast tall.
It'd be
Yeah.
real squirrel size. You're not going to make
Yeah.
him a giant squirrel.
Well, no, because what you could do is you could put like squads on bases.
I'd just
Yeah.
print them off at 15 mil then.
use them for Undaunted as stand-ins.
For stand-ins. I see your historical accuracy and I raise you squirrel Tommies. Da, 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 da. Get some.
I mean, that's one way to sneak in and get Hitler.
Oh yeah.
Undaunted
Wow.
Normandy. There you go.
Unfortunately, would they go after Hitler, considering you only have one nut?
Well, you see, I don't know. I think you'd
Boom.
probably just see them in Bastogne just for the commander's reply. They're just like, someone said there was nuts here.
Makes sense. All of a sudden, they're just peeling the people out. Right. That's some interesting 3D printing, Ben.
Also,
Victory to the vanquished, not suffering. Huh? But I think we're going to move on and have a look at some Kickstarters.
Did you win one of our prizes? Find out on our prize claim center over at OnTableTop.com. Here we list all our previous prizes and those who have won. If you see your username, fill out the form to claim your prize. All prizes must be claimed within 30 days.
so we're starting off. We have 2 role-play games for you this week. So the first of these is from Magpie Games, who have been working on what is, to date, the biggest role-playing game Kickstarter that has ever existed on the platform.
Ooh.
So, anyone seen Avatar? Pretty awesome, right?
The
Anyone seen?
Space Smurfs.
No, not Pocahontas in space. This is Avatar with Aang and Korra and all the awesome elemental benders that you could ever want. And they have come to the tabletop as part of Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. So in this game, which is powered by the Apocalypse system, which is pretty awesome, you will get to play as elemental benders of earth, water, fire, and what's the other one? Wind. There we go. Air.
It's kind of the main character, Ben.
The other element. And you'll be able to play
The fifth element.
the fifth element. Yes.
No, Lily Dallas is not in this.
Multipass.
Mila Jovovich is the fifth element. Yes. She's always in my mind. But anyway, you'll be able to play throughout the different periods of the Avatar's history. So you'll be able to play during the period of Kyoshi and Roku, back when they were the Avatars. Maybe you then want to play during the 100 Years' War, when the Fire Nation had taken over everything and had commanded the world. Or maybe you want to fight alongside Aang to try and take down the Fire Nation. You can even then go into the future and you can have a look at the Legend of Korra and wander around Republic City alongside her and her friends, trying to find out what's going on with all the strange anti-Bender sentiment that is out there, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
As I say, the game uses the Powered by the Apocalypse Apocalypse system, which is very quick and easy to dive into. It's very, very simple. So you decide on a move, and then you roll 2d6 and you add a stat to it. If you get to 10 plus, you're good. Everything worked out fine. If you roll a 7 to 9, then you get good, but with complications, because everyone likes a little bit of failing forward in their role plays. Very good stuff. And then if you get 6 and below, something goes very badly wrong. But thankfully, on 2d6, the average is a 7. So fingers crossed. And thumbs up.
No, but if something can go horribly wrong, the chances of it happening are 100%.
And stats within the game range from -3 up to +3. So there's a little bit of deviance in there, which I think is pretty awesome. And I like that there's lots of more minor stuff in there too, because obviously not everyone is great at everything. And I like that, especially within the world of Avatar, sometimes actually do fail in their endeavors.
Steampunk.
So yeah. Oh yeah, steampunk stuff is very big in Legend of Korra. It's very, very cool indeed. You've got like grappling hooks and all sorts of different things. It's very cool.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's only one character I want to play in this. And anyone who's watched the show will know exactly who it is when I say this.
Is it Jake
My
Sully?
Cabbages!
He wants to play the cabbage merchant.
I want to play the My Cabbages guy, yeah.
There is actually a My Cabbages pledge, which is for retailers, which is very cool.
Amazing. I think what's really cool about this is it does physically look like it's in the same universe. You find a lot of stuff that goes from a TV program that they change the art style ever so slightly, and art style does kind of irk with me a little bit, and it does feel like an addition to the universe that you could become part of, as opposed to something on the side. It's nice that it feels thematic.
What you'll see happen sometimes, Free, is instead of going after like the TV license, which would be horrendously expensive, they'll go for like either a comic book or a graphic novel license, which is far cheaper, and then they're stuck using that art style.
No.
We won't have any talk of the movie in here either, which is awesome. But anyway.
Well, hang on, Ben, you just did it, so -5 points.
So one of the cool things about the Powered by the Apocalypse system is you use something called playbooks. So playbooks are kind of like nice and easy ways for you to dive into playing a character, and they come with kind of like pre-built concepts and ideas for you to use when you're playing a character. So if you see something that works for the kind of character that you like playing, you basically take that playbook. It has all of the stuff you need inside it. You tweak a couple of stats here and there, and it will basically give you a guide of how to play that character. When you're diving into the role-playing game, it's a really fun little addition, and it's a nice way to get people sort of stuck into the game, because a lot of people maybe are moving over from systems that they're familiar with, like D&D, and this might be a little bit different to what they've done before, but it's nice to have things like the playbooks there to kind of guide you into the process, which I think is really cool. You can of course go beyond that and play around with all the different stats as you see fit, which is nice. One of the things to mention is that obviously this is an Avatar game, so you can play an earth, air, fire or water bender. I remembered them all this time. But you can also just be a normal chap if you like, and you can just be helping out everyone along the way, which I think is really cool.
Support role.
A support role, yeah. And as we've seen in the cartoon, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, being the support role is just as important as being Aang. So yeah, especially when he's being a little whiny bastard.
Or getting way too big for his boots. I'm the Avatar. Everything's fine. No, it's not. I just get to work.
I love a cloth mat.
Yeah, nice mat.
Yeah. So they have put together a whole bunch of additional bits and pieces as we're seeing here. So you have a set of cards that you can use to help you with your actions when you're playing the game. They've got the cloth mat that we just looked at before then. You've got a set of dice that are themed to the game as well, which is really nice. You've got little pouches and bags that you can use as well. So yeah, really awesome stuff. There's even adventure books, as we're seeing there, which are tied to each of the different elements. So there's one all about the Water Nation, one all about the Fire Nation, one about the Earth Nation, that kind of thing as well. So if you want to go on an adventure in like Ba Sing Se and all that kind of thing, then you can definitely do that. Avatar is very, very cool. It's an awesome world that I'm loving seeing expanded in this style here, which is just awesome. Magpie have put a lot of love and effort into this as well. And you can see why it's so well funded. Everyone loves Avatar, I think. And as Gerry clicked on earlier, there is actually a quick start rules that you can download. So it's not just available immediately as a PDF, but basically you just got to put in your email address and they'll send you a PDF version of the rules to play around with. And it's a really, really nice little quick start that gets you started with a fun adventure within the Fire Nation. So it's definitely worth going to check out. So,
hello, Ben. There is no role-playing in Ba Sing Se.
No role-playing, no war.
Honestly, I think this is going to be great because it's such a huge IP that so many people will know. It's going to bring a lot of new blood into role playing, I would say, as well. Which is why those booklets you were talking about earlier are so important, because it's a first time role player not knowing what they're doing. give them a booklet that they're just like, okay, so this is how I should do this. All right, I'm in.
Yeah, and as I say, the Powered by the Apocalypse system is really good, and it's very narratively driven. So it's very much enforcing players to be like, so you do this, but why do you do this kind of thing? And I think that's really important, especially when you're diving into role playing, to try and like tell a bit more of a story alongside what the DM's telling you as well. So
although
very cool stuff.
Holy hell, they're having to make over 51,000 copies.
It's books, right? Books are cheap.
Books, print.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's hey, whoever had the idea to get that IP and get it as a role-playing game, well done you.
Well, the thing is the world is so big as well, isn't it? The world is huge. So there's corners upon corners that you could probably touch on. You probably wouldn't see the other side of the world as well. Yeah. So it's really exciting to see.
All about unobtainium. That's what I remember.
Not Pocahontas in space, Jerry.
That's it. Yeah.
Aren't they making a second one of those?
Yes, they are.
Fly straight, damn it.
For why?
Because they can. But
money.
Hollywood's out of ideas.
Exceptionally well funded.
Yes.
It's got 13 days left on it. So if you want to back it, join the crowd, get in there. Then you too can be a bender of your choice or a flexo if you don't want to be a bender.
My cabbage.
Was that a Futurama joke there, Gerry?
What's up next?
Well, it's not completely fresh content that's going up on Kickstarter. So the well-known RPG Delta Green from Arc Dream Publishing is taking a revisit, and it's going to pull in some players of age. So there's, and as well as some fresh meat to enter the complete horror. So the newest update to Delta Green has been updated on the original release, which was originally out in 1996. So it's got new rules, fresh content, and a ridiculous amount of story and lore to completely discover. So the RPG looks at all of the conspiring mystery in the universe, which we can relate to in any paranormal circumstance. So if you like investigating some bananas outcomes that will make Mulder and Scully go, what is this? Yeah, so you're going to want to put your tinfoil hat on for this tabletop adventure, because it could start with invasive aliens and end on Cthulhu. So you might want to give this one a look. So when going into an adventure, you'll play an agent. So you'll take on a role embedded into this workplace, Delta Green. So as I said, like kind of think Mulder and Scully, Delta Green's not an ordinary government unit. It's a team of investigators and placed in some weird and wonderful and unexplained events that could truly be anything. So unnatural beings on the planet, taking down threats and looking at missions and investigating things that should not be there in both space and time as well. So there is a lot coming from this. There is a good through pledges as well. If you do want to get involved, there's the already established campaign. So you can get yourself their PDF copy as well for just literally as little as 15 quid. So if you do want that one, that's sent over. But if you do like big books and real lovely hardbacks and stuff fun, you can get that for a 29 quid roughly, 27 pounds, as well as some of the scenario stories and extra missions that you can get as well. But if you did really want everything, there is a pledge that goes up to, I think it was about £219, that gives you absolutely everything, whether it be the books, the extra stuff here and there as well. So it's got 21 days left. It was funded within days, and I can imagine it would have been because people have been playing this since 1996. You've had a go, haven't you, Gerry?
Yeah. It's worth bearing in mind that they've got that wrong where they say 25 years, because as we know, the 90s were only a decade ago. But Delta Green was licensed out from Chaosium to Pagan Publishing. The source book for Delta Green is bigger than the core rule book.
Wow.
That's a supplement for. So this really did bring it to a whole new level, whereas people have been used to playing against the forces of the mythos creatures and their cultists in the 1920s and in Gaslight. When you get to the modern day, so when you're playing in the 90s, it really lent into the not just the X-Files side of things, but also, I suppose, Dark Skies as well, where shadowy government organizations know what's going on and they don't want other people knowing what's going on. And it bridges the gap very nicely between Cthulhu. Hello, Natharla between Cthulhu and sort of modern day, because when you play the original COC, you're always playing people up against magic and mystery and monsters, and that's how science views them at that time. They're not right. When you pull it into the 90s, there's that phrase, magic. Any sufficiently advanced science looks like magic to the people who don't know what's going on. And so you've got that. You've also got Cthulhu entities, which are all from beyond the stars. None of them are really monsters in a horror or supernatural idea. They are civilizations and races from all over the place. So it just makes sense that when you bring it into the 90s, it's more a X-Files, Dark Skies style of thing than, worrying about magic and occult. Because, Yethian time streamers are terrible triangular gits, regardless of where they're from. And just because they're trying to put people's brains in a jar doesn't mean Mygo aren't monsters. They're just aliens from, Mars, and it's sticking people's heads in there. So it's great to see it getting a new lease of life and getting a shiny new book. I wonder how much of it they're going to update, because as they said, it's a reprint with the shiny cover.
Fresh artwork, fresh rules, fresh content. Yeah,
so fresh artwork's in there.
But I do like how you say that, because obviously in real time, talking real talk, electricity one day was magic to us, and it's nice that it's taking that outlook of realism and saying, okay, it's something we don't understand, it's something that we can't fathom, therefore it is science that we need to discover more, as opposed to wow, magic, shiny fantasy universe. It's a different take. I like that a lot. But
and always remember, anytime you meet anybody from Majestic 12, shoot them in the head. Don't wait.
Now, there is one thing I noticed scrolling through this earlier. There is a free download for a quick start setup.
Yeah.
Nice.
So if anyone actually wants to take a little blat at it before they dive into the Kickstarter, or have a little look at what the system looks like, that is there for you, which I think is a really nice thing to have on a Kickstarter like this.
Yeah.
It's Delta Green need to know.
It's well, as long as they haven't changed it, don't change it.
Well, they do say clearly that it's been updated. Doesn't mean change. So updated rules, updated are,
It depends what they're going to do. Call of Cthulhu has remained pretty much exactly as it was for 40 years, because it's a system that doesn't need to be changed. With 7th, they added an additional D100 to your roll for reasons best known to themselves that I dislike as a GM, because it means you can't really calculate probabilities as easily. If I tell somebody they've got to roll 50 or less, then it's a 50-50, it's a half. They'll either get it or they won't. It's fairly binary. The minute I go, it's 50 or less, roll an extra D100 and then choose, or maybe it's negative and you have to pick the lowest, maybe it's positive and you have to pick the highest, and then you have to start working on statistical probabilities of dice rolling in your head. That's annoying.
Yes.
That should never have been added. And they added that just to make it different.
Of course.
I hate you, 7th edition. I hate you so much. But
so if we ever play Cthulhu, we're playing 6th.
Yeah, that must be the case.
I have 1st to 6th up there. I don't care which.
Nice.
Anything from 2nd onwards, when they started adding 0.1% in to everything, so that you always have a chance, is fine. That's only that's the biggest change they made, and that's all I really care about. So I imagine if they've updated it, maybe it's updated for 7th to keep it in line, or maybe they've just tidied it up a little bit and done that. But there's also Delta Green RPG bundle as well, which is running in conjunction with this.
Yeah, it's only at those prices while the Kickstarter is running, I believe.
Yeah. So it's while the Kickstarter's on, but there are also a bunch of like digital and physical stretch goals as well on the campaign that you can add, including some like classic towers that were there before that have just been updated and added to the stretch goals as well. So some of the initial missions that were of time have now been added as stretch goals and updated. So they probably won't be going for retail if they're going to be a stretch goal. So it's a nice way to get your hands on some extra content.
Cool. And I see they're even donating some of the 10% of each payment is going to pandemic-related charity directly.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's quite nice.
Yeah.
It's probably a good way to do it, especially at this moment in time, because we can't be entirely certain that Delta Green are not responsible for most of what we have to deal with.
That one jail cell, that one guy had one job, which was to lock the jail cell, didn't lock the jail cell, and it got out.
Yeah.
You say that.
Yeah.
It's more likely that that one guy had one job, and that was to unlock that jail cell and release that man into the population to see what was going to happen. Anytime you meet Majestic 12, shoot him in the head.
Delta Green are just hiding in plain sight, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, they always have been. They always will be.
Yeah.
But again, well funded, and it has
21 days.
21 days left. 3 whole shiny weeks for the 25th brackets 10th anniversary edition of Delta Green. So yeah, fantastic stuff. I will look forward to seeing how they go. I may have to pick up a copy of Delta because I didn't buy it the first time round because a friend had it. I didn't know it. But enough of that. We are going to move on, for we have reached the end of this week's show. Anything of interest to you guys, please join the conversation below. If you are interested in helping us get to our 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, click away. We're only about 800 short at the moment, and you can win a copy of Kill Team Octarius.
Yeah.
Nice. That'll be exciting. And if you're not fed up with our talking, then you can come and join us for the XLBS show on Sunday morning, where the 4 of us will be sitting down and waffling about hobby. I think we have a topic that has been teased this week by young Ben. So that'll be interesting to see what we come up with there. But until then, we're going to move on. Enjoy your weekend.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.